Hey, race the first part of your story with intense emotion, unexpected turns, and no cliches. Let me know if you want any tweaks. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl, like you've stepped into a moment you weren't supposed to witness. I had just walked through the front door, still holding the six-pack I picked up on the way home, expecting to hear the usual chaos. Jake and Liam bickering over the TV, the hum of Amanda talking on the phone, maybe the distant clatter of dishes in the kitchen. But there was nothing, just the steady tick of the wall clock and the low murmur of voices coming from the other room. I moved without thinking, my steps slow, careful. The voices grew clearer. The boys. Amanda. I was about to call out when I heard the words that stopped me dead in my tracks. Your real father is Dad's best friend, Mike. Once the house is paid off, we'll reveal the truth at Christmas, and he'll take everything in the divorce. Then we'll move in with your real father. I blinked. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. The room spun. My grip tightened around the beer pack in my hand, the cardboard crumpling under the pressure. I waited for laughter, some kind of twisted joke, but there was none. Only silence, broken by the sound of my boys' innocent voices. But we love Dad, Jake's small voice said. Liam echoed him, yeah, he's our dad, not Mike. Amanda's voice softened, dripping with fake warmth. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes people grow apart. Mike is, well, he's your real father. He loves you so much, and once everything is settled, we'll be a family with him. Something inside me cracked. I took a step back, pressing myself against the wall. My own best friend. My boys. My home. My entire life built on a lie. And she was just sitting there, planting the seeds in their heads, laying out her perfect little plan like it was just another day in her world. I forced myself to breathe. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. I had to think. If I walked in now, fists clenched, voice shaking, what would it change? She'd deny it. She'd twist it. She'd smile that smug, condescending smile and tell me I misunderstood. No, not yet. I exhaled slowly, stepped back into the hall. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone, opening the recording app. I had no idea what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew one thing, Amanda wasn't getting away with this. Not this time. I turned, walking toward my office. My mind raced, a storm of thoughts crashing against each other. The trust fund. The house. The twins. If she thought she was about to rip my life apart like some premeditated game of chess, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I had months until Christmas. And if she wanted a war, she just got one. I shut the door to my office and locked it. My hands were shaking, my breathing uneven. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to go back in there, to tear apart her perfect little fantasy, to make her choke on the words she had just spoken. But I didn't. Because anger burns fast and hot, and if I let it control me now, I'd lose. Instead, I sat down at my desk and pulled out a notebook. I needed to be smart, calculated. I needed to think about every step before I took it, because if I made one wrong move, she'd take everything, just like she planned. I forced myself to go over the facts. 1. Amanda had been cheating on me with Mike. I had suspected something was off for months, but now I had confirmation. 2. The twins weren't mine. She had lied to me for 8 years, letting me raise them, love them, believe they were mine, all while knowing the truth. 3. She planned to blindside me with divorce the moment the house was paid off. If she got her way, she'd take the house, take the kids, take my money, and move in with Mike like I never existed. I clenched my jaw, gripping my pen so hard I thought it might snap. No, she wasn't going to win. I opened my laptop and started researching. Divorce laws, custody battles, paternity fraud. Every single way I could protect myself from what was coming. I needed leverage, and I needed it fast. Then I remembered the trust. Months ago, I had started setting up a trust for the twins. I had wanted to make sure they had a future, something to fall back on no matter what. But if they weren't mine? I swallowed hard, forcing the thought down. That didn't matter right now. What mattered was that Amanda didn't know the full details of that trust. She thought she'd be able to take everything, but she had no idea that the house was already tied to it. If I moved fast, I could lock it down before she even realized what was happening. I picked up my phone and made a call. Hey, Mark. Yeah, I need a favor. A big one. Mark was my lawyer, and he was damn good at what he did. If anyone could help me lock Amanda out before she had a chance to screw me over, it was him. I kept the conversation vague, just enough to let him know I needed to protect my assets immediately. I didn't tell him everything yet. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. When I hung up, I felt the first real sense of control I'd had since hearing those words come out of her mouth. I wasn't going to be her victim. A knock at the door. Babe. Her voice was sweet, gentle, like she hadn't just shattered my entire world. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and got up. When I opened the door, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't plotting to gut me from the inside out. There you are, she said, slipping her arms around my neck. You okay? You seem a little tense. Her touch made my skin crawl. I forced myself to smile. Just a long day at work, she hummed, running her fingers through my hair. I was thinking, maybe we could do something special tonight, just us. I stared at her. The audacity, the sheer, unbelievable nerve. I wanted to grab her wrists, shove her away, demand to know how she could look me in the eye after what she had just said to our children. Instead, I leaned in, pressing a kiss to her forehead. That sounds perfect. Because now it was my turn to play the game. That night, I lay in bed with Amanda curled up next to me, her arm draped over my chest like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life hours ago. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, like she was completely at ease. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Every inhale felt like swallowing glass, every exhale was a fight to stay in control. She thought she had one. She thought I was still the same clueless idiot, the devoted husband who would never question her, never see through her manipulations. But she didn't realize I was already 10 steps ahead of her. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the boys' faces, heard their little voices calling me Dad, believing, without a doubt, that I was theirs. And now I knew the truth. It should have changed the way I felt, but it didn't. I still loved them. They were still my sons. No DNA test could erase that. Morning came, and Amanda played her part flawlessly. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled as she made breakfast, chatted about weekend plans like nothing was wrong. I played along, nodding, smiling, responding when necessary. But my mind was already at war, strategizing my next move. I waited until she left for her yoga class, which I now strongly suspected was just an excuse to meet up with Mike. The second the door shut behind her, I grabbed my car keys and headed out. I wasn't going to let her dictate how this ended. My first stop was a DNA testing clinic. The recording was damning, but I needed ironclad proof before I made my move. I had to be absolutely certain. I filled out the paperwork, handed over the samples, and paid extra for expedited results. Then I drove to Mike's office. I wasn't there to confront him. Not yet. I just needed to see him. To look him in the eyes and know that he had spent years smiling in my face, pretending to be my best friend while he built a life with my wife behind my back. His car was parked outside, sleek and polished like everything else in his life. I sat there for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Then, just as I was about to leave, the doors to the building opened. And there he was. But he wasn't alone. Amanda was with him. They were standing too close. Her hand brushed his arm as she laughed, her head tilting in that familiar way, the same way she used to look at me. Mike said something, and she leaned in, whispering in his ear. And then he kissed her. Right there in broad daylight. Not a quick, guilty kiss, not something stolen in secrecy. This was different. Confident. Possessive. Like he wasn't worried about being caught. Like he had already won. My vision blurred at the edges, rage curling in my gut like a wildfire. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to breathe through it. If I confronted them now, I'd lose. I had to be smart. So instead, I reached for my phone, snapped a few pictures, and drove away. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. The pictures of Amanda and Mike burned a hole in my phone's gallery. I must have stared at them 100 times, memorizing every smug detail, the way she smiled at him, the way he looked at her like she was his and always had been. The way they weren't even trying to hide it. By the time I got home, I had calmed down. At least on the outside. Amanda was already there, humming in the kitchen like she hadn't just been wrapped around another man an hour ago. The smell of pasta filled the air. My boys sat at the table, kicking their feet, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around them. I had never been a good actor, but right now I deserved a damn Oscar. "Hey, babe," Amanda called over her shoulder as she stirred a pot of sauce. "You were out late. Work?" I slid my phone into my pocket, my expression perfectly neutral. "Yeah, had some things to take care of." She turned and gave me that familiar, easy smile, like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just watched her swap spit with my so-called best friend in the middle of the street. My stomach twisted, but I smiled back. I sat down at the table with the boys, ruffling their hair as they argued about who would win in a fight, Batman or Spider-Man. It was such a normal, everyday moment that for a second, I let myself pretend everything was fine, that I wasn't sitting across from a woman who had built our entire life on lies. Dinner passed like any other night. I listened. I nodded. I laughed at the right moments. But I was watching. Every move Amanda made, every glance at her phone, every fake smile. She had no idea I knew. She kissed me goodnight like always, slid into bed like always, fell asleep without a care in the world. And I got to work. I grabbed my laptop and slipped into my office, locking the door behind me. The first thing I did was back up the recording. Multiple copies, different devices, cloud storage, even a flash drive I'd hide later. I wasn't about to let evidence this damning disappear. Then I dug into the finances. Amanda had no idea that I had already spoken to my lawyer. She thought I was an idiot. She thought I wouldn't see what was coming. But I was already moving the chess pieces. The house? Already in the trust for the boys. She wouldn't get it. The bank accounts? I was making sure she couldn't bleed me dry the second she filed. The business I had spent years building? She wasn't touching that either. And as I combed through our financial records, something caught my eye, something that sent a slow, sickening realization creeping down my spine. Large withdrawals. Thousands of dollars missing over the past 2 years. At first, I thought she had just been careless with money. But then I saw where the money was going. Payments. Hidden in different accounts. One of them was in Mike's name. I sat back, exhaling sharply. She hadn't just been cheating on me. She had been funding his life with my money. I closed my laptop, staring blankly at the wall. My pulse pounded in my ears, a deep, rhythmic rage settling into my bones. I had been played. Completely. And they weren't even done with me yet. I ran a hand over my face, taking a slow breath. "All right, Amanda. You want to ruin me? Let's see who falls first." The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table sipping my coffee, watching Amanda move around like she hadn't just set fire to our life. She was wearing one of my old college hoodies, acting like the same woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But I saw her differently now. She was a stranger in my house, an intruder in my life. She glanced at me over her mug, smiling like she always did. "You okay? You seem a little off." I smiled back. "Just thinking about work." She nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, I figured. You've been working a lot lately. Maybe we should take a trip soon. You know? Just us." I almost laughed. A trip. She wanted me to drop everything and take her on vacation while she planned to gut me in a few months. "That sounds great," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. "Maybe after the holidays." She grinned, like she had already won. I finished my coffee, grabbed my keys, and kissed the boys on the head. "Be good today, all right?" They both nodded, still half asleep over their bowls of cereal. I gave Amanda one last glance before heading out the door. She had no idea where I was really going. I pulled into a small office building across town. It wasn't flashy, nothing impressive. But inside was the one person who could make sure Amanda's little plan fell apart before she even had the chance to set it in motion. Mark was already waiting for me. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded on the desk. "All right, tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the recording, about what I overheard. I told him about the DNA test I had sent in. I told him about the money, the hidden payments to Mike. I laid everything out, piece by piece, watching as his expression darkened. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "Jesus, she's not just trying to screw you over, man. She's planning a goddamn heist." I nodded. "That's why I need to make sure she gets nothing." Mark leaned forward. Well, you've already made the right move with the house trust. That's locked in. She's got no claim to it, no matter what happens. What about the bank accounts? We need to move fast, he said. Separate your personal funds before she tries to drain them. And we should look into those payments. If she's been stealing money from joint accounts, you might have grounds for legal action. I exhaled. Good. What about the boys? Mark hesitated. That one's complicated. Legally, you're still their father. But if the DNA test comes back proving they're not yours, he sighed. It could get ugly. If she fights for full custody, a judge might side with her. Especially if you're not the biological father. My stomach twisted. I had expected that answer, but hearing it out loud made it real. I don't want to lose them. I get that. But you need to decide how you want to play this. Do you want to fight for custody, or do you want to expose everything and let her crash and burn? I rubbed a hand over my face. Both. Mark grinned. Then we need to be smart. We spent the next hour going over every detail, every possible outcome. By the time I walked out of his office, I had a plan. Amanda thought she had months to pull this off. She was wrong. When I got home, she was in the living room scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when I walked in, smiling. Hey, you're home early. I set my bag down, watching her. Yeah. Slow day at work. She stretched, standing up. Perfect timing. I was thinking we could have a date night. Maybe go out for dinner. She was good. I had to give her that. Playing the perfect wife, keeping up the act. But now I could see every little crack in her performance. I smiled. Sounds great. She kissed my cheek. I'll make a reservation. As she walked away, I took out my phone and checked my messages. One for Mark. Bank accounts separated. She can't touch your money anymore. Amanda had no idea her plan had already started falling apart. And I wasn't done yet. That evening, I sat across from Amanda at a dimly lit restaurant, the kind she always chose, fancy enough to make a statement but not over the top. The type of place where she could pretend we were the perfect couple, where she could bask in the illusion she had crafted. She looked beautiful. She always had. That was part of what made this so gut-wrenching. The woman sitting across from me, swirling her wine, smiling like she still loved me, was a master of deception. I mirrored her, playing the part of the devoted husband. We talked about small things, work, the kids, upcoming plans. She leaned in when she laughed, reached for my hand across the table. To any outsider, we looked like any other married couple. But I knew better. Halfway through dinner, she tilted her head at me. You seem different lately. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? She took another sip of wine, watching me closely. I don't know. Just distant. Distracted. I smiled, shaking my head. Work's been stressful. Her fingers tapped against her glass, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. Suspicion. Or maybe calculation. You'd tell me if something was wrong, right? The nerve. The sheer, unbelievable audacity. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Of course. She smiled, satisfied. If she had even the slightest idea what was coming, she didn't show it. When we got home, Amanda went upstairs to change, and I went straight to my office. My phone buzzed the moment I shut the door. Mark, DNA results came in. Call me. My throat went dry. I stood there for a moment, staring at the message, forcing myself to breathe before I finally pressed the call button. He picked up on the first ring. It's official. I swallowed hard. Both of them. A beat of silence. Yeah. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of my desk. I had known this was coming. I had already accepted it. But hearing it confirmed? That was something else entirely. Are you okay? Mark asked. I let out a slow, steady breath. Yeah. A lie. What's the next step? Well, now we have leverage, he said. She committed paternity fraud. If you take this to court, she's got a lot to answer for. I nodded, my mind racing. And the money? Still digging. But from what I've found so far, it looks like she's been funneling a good chunk of your income into Mike's account for at least 2 years. We're talking tens of thousands. My jaw tightened. And she thinks I don't know. She has no idea, Mark confirmed. We can use this, man. If she tries to take you for everything, we flip this on her. She's the one who's been lying, stealing. She won't get a damn cent if we do this right. Good. That was all I needed to hear. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. This was it. The moment everything truly changed. Amanda had spent years weaving her web of lies, thinking she could control the outcome. But now? Now she was standing on a trapdoor and I was the one holding the lever. I walked into the bedroom like nothing had happened. Amanda was already in bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I came in, smiling. "All good?" she asked. I nodded, climbing into bed beside her. "Yeah, just checking some emails." She hummed in acknowledgement, setting her phone on the nightstand. She turned toward me, pressing a slow kiss against my jaw. "Tonight was nice," she murmured. I smiled, wrapping an arm around her, pulling her close. "It really was," I said. And it was. Because tonight was the beginning of the end. The morning after our date night, Amanda was up before me, moving through the house like the perfect wife. She kissed me on the cheek as I sat at the kitchen table, poured me coffee, asked me what I wanted for breakfast. I told her toast was fine, and she hummed, grabbing the bread like this was any other morning. Like she wasn't secretly planning to rip my life apart. Like she hadn't lied to me every single day for almost a decade. Like she wasn't about to lose everything. She had no idea that, while she was buttering my toast, I was already setting the final stages of my plan in motion. Step 1. Secure the house. I had already ensured Amanda couldn't touch the house by moving it into the trust for the boys. But now that the DNA results were back, things had shifted. Legally, I could challenge my parental rights, withdraw from the trust entirely, and leave the house solely in their names, untouchable by her. It would mean walking away from the home I built, but I was past sentimental attachments. I sent a quick message to Mark to finalize it. Step 2. Control the narrative. Amanda thought she was in control. She thought that when Christmas came, she would be the one revealing the big secret, blindsiding me with divorce papers, walking away with the house and my money while I sat there like a fool. That wasn't happening. I needed to gather witnesses, build my case. I couldn't let her twist the story. So I called my in-laws. I didn't know where Amanda was at the moment, probably at one of her usual gym sessions with Mike, but that gave me time. Her mother, Diane, picked up after a few rings. "Oh, hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" "Yeah, Diane," I said, keeping my voice light. "Listen, I was thinking. We should do Christmas a little differently this year. Maybe a big family gathering at our place. You, Amanda's dad, her sister. What do you think?" "Oh, that sounds wonderful. We haven't done a big family Christmas in years." "Perfect." We exchanged pleasantries and I told her I'd confirm details soon. I hung up, already moving on to the next part of my plan. Step 3. Expose Amanda and Mike. I had the recording. I had the DNA results. I had the financial proof of her funneling money into Mike's account. I had the photos of them together. But I needed something more. Something that would not just expose her but completely destroy her credibility before she could even attempt to spin a different story. That's where Greg came in. Greg was another mutual friend, someone I had known since college. Unlike Mike, he wasn't a backstabbing piece of trash. And he also happened to work in private security. I dialed his number. "Yo, what's up, man?" Greg's voice was casual, but I wasn't in the mood for small talk. "I need your help." A pause. "Serious help?" "Very. Say no more." Greg was the kind of guy who didn't ask too many questions. I told him I needed surveillance proof that Amanda and Mike were meeting up. Where, how often? He agreed immediately. "Give me a couple of days," he said. "I'll get you what you need." I thanked him and hung up. Everything was falling into place. That evening, Amanda came home acting like the perfect wife again. She wrapped her arms around me, kissed me softly, and asked me about my day. I told her it was great. I told her I had invited her parents over for Christmas, and she hesitated for half a second before recovering with a bright smile. "Oh, that'll be fun," she said. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the gears turning. This wasn't part of her plan. She had wanted Christmas to be the moment she destroyed me. Now, with her family there, things weren't so simple. Good. We sat down to dinner. The boys chatted about school, completely unaware of the war happening between the two adults at the table. Amanda reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together, smiling at me like she hadn't spent the afternoon wrapped around my best friend. I squeezed her hand back, smiling just as sweetly, because she had no idea that her entire world was about to collapse. 3 days later, Greg sent me a message. "Got what you need. Meet me tonight." I left the house under the excuse of a late work meeting, But my real destination was a dimly lit parking lot across town. Greg was already there, leaning against his car, a cigarette dangling between his fingers. He flicked it away when I approached, handing me a flash drive. "Everything's on there," he said. "Time-stamped photos, video, and audio. Your wife's been real busy." I plugged the drive into my laptop the second I got home and locked myself in my office. And there it was. Amanda and Mike, meeting at hotels, sneaking into his car, talking in hushed voices that Greg's equipment had picked up clearly. One video had Amanda sitting in Mike's lap in his car, giggling as she played with his tie. "He has no idea," she whispered. "And when he finds out, it won't even matter. I'll be gone. And so will his money." Mike chuckled, gripping her waist. "Think he'll fight for the kids?" "Oh, please." She rolled her eyes. "He's too soft. He'll be heartbroken, but he won't fight me. And by the time he even thinks about it, I'll already have custody locked in." I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse hammering. She thought I was weak. She thought I would just roll over and let her destroy me. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. I spent the next few days finalizing everything with Mark. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, all the paperwork was ready. The house was legally out of Amanda's reach. The bank accounts were separated. The paternity results were printed. The surveillance footage was backed up in multiple places. All that was left was the execution. The trap was set, and Amanda had no idea. Christmas morning, the house was filled with the scent of cinnamon and pine. The twins were running around in their pajamas, tearing into presents, their laughter echoing through the living room. Amanda was in full holiday mode, smiling, laughing, playing the doting wife and mother. Her parents arrived first, bringing trays of food and wine. Then her sister, then a few family friends. And then, right on cue, Mike showed up. Amanda's eyes widened slightly when she saw him, just a flicker of surprise before she masked it with a smile. "Oh, Mike, you made it." I bet she wasn't expecting him here. She probably hadn't wanted to risk her two lives colliding just yet. I clapped Mike on the back, grinning. Of course, he made it. He's family, right? Mike gave me a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, right?" He glanced at Amanda and I caught the look that passed between them. Silent communication. Panic under the surface. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. After dinner, I stood up, raising my glass. "Everyone," I said, my voice warm, steady, inviting. "I just want to take a moment to say how grateful I am. Family is everything. And I've got some news to share that's going to change all of our lives." Amanda's spine stiffened. Mike shifted in his chair. I reached under the tree, grabbing the neatly wrapped box I had placed there that morning. I handed it to Amanda with a smile. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. "What is this?" "Open it." She hesitated, glancing around the room. Everyone was watching. There was no way out. Slowly, she unwrapped the box and lifted the lid. Inside was an envelope. She pulled it out, unfolded the papers, and as her eyes scanned the contents, all the color drained from her face. The room was silent. "What is it?" her mother asked, leaning closer. Amanda swallowed hard. "It's paternity test results," I said. My voice was calm, almost gentle. "Turns out the twins aren't mine." Collective gasp. Her mother's hands flew to her mouth. "Amanda, is this true?" Amanda's lips parted, but no words came out. I turned to Mike. "Congratulations, buddy. Looks like you're a father." Mike's face went pale. I didn't let him speak. I reached back under the tree, pulling out another envelope. "And here's something special for you, Amanda. Divorce papers. Effective immediately." Amanda shot up from her seat. "Wait, we need to talk about this privately." "Oh, don't worry," I said, flashing a smile. "We'll talk. In court." She looked like she wanted to scream, like she wanted to lunge at me, claw my eyes out, make this all go away. But she couldn't, because the truth was out. And she had lost. The silence in the room was suffocating. Amanda stood frozen, her hands gripping the divorce papers so tightly they crumpled at the edges. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths. Her parents were staring at her, wide-eyed, their faces twisted in shock and disappointment. Mike sat there like a man awaiting execution, his jaw clenched, his fingers twitching on the armrest of his chair. I let the moment sink in. Let them all absorb what had just happened. Amanda was the first to break. She laughed. A short, sharp, breathless sound, shaking her head like I had just pulled the most ridiculous prank in the world. This is insane, she stammered. Where are you getting this from? DNA test results? Divorce papers? What the hell are you talking about? She was scrambling, trying to control the narrative. But I wasn't giving her a single inch. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Oh, right? Maybe I should have started with this. I reached under the tree one last time, pulling out a neatly wrapped flash drive. I turned and handed it to her. This, I said, is video and audio proof of you sneaking around with Mike. The little meetings. The gym sessions. The hotels. Your sweet little conversations about how I was too weak to fight back. Her entire body went rigid. Her mother gasped, looking at her in horror. Amanda, tell me this isn't true. Amanda's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her father slammed his hand on the table, his face red. Are you kidding me, Amanda? What the hell have you done? But I wasn't finished. I turned to Mike. And you, I said, shaking my head with mock disappointment. Stealing from me, buddy? That's low. I mean, sleeping with my wife is one thing. But taking my money? That's just offensive. Mike shot up from his chair. I don't know what you're talking about. I chuckled, nodding toward another envelope on the table. Bank statements say otherwise. Tens of thousands of dollars all funneled into your account. Thanks for making it so easy to track, by the way. Real amateur work. His face turned ghostly pale. Amanda turned on him immediately. You told me it was untraceable, she hissed, her voice sharp with panic. Mike snapped his head toward her. Oh, so now it's my fault. Maybe if you hadn't been so eager to bleed him dry, we wouldn't be in this mess. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching them turn on each other. Beautiful. Amanda whipped back to me, her mask of desperation crumbling into fury. You set me up, she seethed. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't set you up, Amanda. You did this all on your own. I just gave you the stage to perform. Her jaw clenched. Her hands trembled. You think you're going to come out of this clean? She spat. You think a judge is going to side with you? I still have rights. I can still fight for the house, the kids. I cut her off with a smirk. Oh, about that. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table toward her. The screen displayed a legal document. Proof that I had removed myself from the trust. The house was now solely in the names of the boys. No way for Amanda to touch it. Her eyes darted back and forth as she read. You, her voice faltered. I gave her a slow nod. That's right. You're not getting the house, Amanda. The boys will have it when they're older. But you're out. She staggered back, gripping the edge of the table. No. This isn't happening. Mike had his head in his hands, looking like he was trying to disappear. He must have thought she had everything under control, that she had me wrapped around her finger. Wrong. Amanda turned to her parents, looking for support. Mom, Dad, you're not really going to believe all of this, are you? Her mother looked at her with nothing but disappointment. I don't even know who you are. Her father shook his head. We raised you better than this. Amanda's breath hitched. I saw it in her eyes, the realization that for the first time she had lost control. She wasn't the mastermind here. She wasn't the one pulling the strings. She was the one being played. The rage in her face melted into something else. Something desperate. We can talk about this, she whispered, turning to me. Privately. Please. The boys, I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. The boys deserve better than you. Her whole body flinched like I had physically struck her. I stood up, grabbing my coat. This conversation is over. The next one we have will be in court. I turned to Mike, flashing him a grin. Hope you've got a good lawyer, buddy. You're gonna need it. Then I walked away, leaving them to deal with the mess they had created. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I drove through the quiet streets that night, gripping the steering wheel, letting the weight of it all settle in. The war was over. I had won. But somehow victory didn't feel like I expected it to. I had spent months unraveling Amanda's web of lies, exposing every deception, countering every move before she could make it. And now, with her empire of manipulation burned to the ground, I should have felt satisfied. Triumphant. But all I felt was a deep, hollow exhaustion. I wasn't sad. No, Amanda had killed any love I had for her the moment she opened her mouth and told my sons they weren't mine. The moment she laughed about how weak I was, how I'd never fight back. But what I did feel, what I couldn't shake, was the betrayal. Not just hers. Mike's. The boys weren't biologically mine, but I had been their father since the day they were born. And she had planned to rip them from me like I was nothing. Like I was disposable. She was wrong. I pulled into the driveway of a hotel, my temporary home, until the divorce was finalized. I couldn't stay in the house. Not because I wasn't welcome there, it was mine for as long as I wanted it. But because every wall, every floorboard, every inch of that place was tainted with her. I stepped into my room, tossing my keys onto the dresser, running a hand through my hair. Then I pulled out my phone. The first message I saw was from Mark. It's done. Amanda's frozen out. No access to the accounts, no way to contest the house trust. She's already called her lawyer. They have nothing. Good. The next message was from Greg. Mike's already panicking. Word's getting around. I wouldn't be surprised if he skips town before this gets uglier. Coward. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly. It was all falling into place. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. The next morning, I drove back to the house. I had texted Amanda and told her I was coming to pick up the rest of my things. She hadn't responded. But when I pulled up, her car was still in the driveway. Good. I stepped inside without knocking. My house. My rules. The twins were in the living room playing a video game. They turned when they saw me, faces lighting up. Dad! Jake yelled, dropping the controller, running up to hug me. Liam followed right after, nearly knocking me over. It was like nothing had changed. Like they didn't know what had happened on Christmas. Like Amanda hadn't poisoned them with her lies yet. I hugged them back, holding them tightly, memorizing the feel of them. My boys. No matter what any DNA test said, these were my sons. I pulled back, clearing my throat. Listen, guys, I need to talk to your mom for a second, okay? They nodded and ran back to their game, and I made my way to the kitchen. Amanda was sitting at the table, her hair tied up, a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tired. Drained. Defeated. I almost didn't recognize her. Her eyes flicked up to me, guarded. What do you want? I sat down across from her, resting my hands on the table. I'm not here to fight. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Right? That's funny, considering you just spent months tearing my life apart. I exhaled slowly. I didn't tear your life apart, Amanda. You did. She flinched but didn't argue. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed, rubbing her temples. What now? I studied her. The woman I had once loved was gone. This version of her, the one sitting across from me now, was just a stranger wearing her face. I'm not going to fight you for custody, I said finally. Not because I don't want them, but because I don't want to drag them through this. She blinked, clearly surprised. Then what do you want? I leaned forward. I want to be in their lives. I don't care what a court says, I don't care what biology says, I raised them. I'm their father. And I'm not walking away. She swallowed, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. For a second, I thought she was going to fight me. But then she nodded. Okay. It wasn't an apology. She would never give me that. But it was something. And for the sake of my boys, it was enough. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Amanda lost everything she had planned to take from me. She had to move out of the house, had no claim to my finances, and the public fallout of her affair left her reputation in shambles. Mike? He bailed. Skipped town before the lawsuits for the stolen money could even hit him. But I didn't care about them anymore. Because I had something more important. The twins still called me Dad. They still ran into my arms when they saw me. They still wanted me at their soccer games, their school events, their birthdays. And that was the real victory. Amanda could have her regrets. Mike could run like the coward he was. But me? I walked away with my sons, and that was all that mattered.